Proof we're all dreaming. Do we need proof? How can we actually attain proof that we are indeed dreaming? Let's first just understand what we mean by dream, because it's kind of a bit confusing, isn't it? When you're in the dream, you're not aware that you're dreaming. You're just having an experience. You can see things, you can hear things that we would say, when we wake up, that it was just illusion. It wasn't really happening. There was no sound. There were no visions. I had a conversation with my deceased relative, and obviously that can't be the case. But yet there you were having those experiences. And similarly today, as you're listening to me right now as I'm speaking, we have this like sort of rich array of colours, textures, tones, forms, sounds, all sorts of things in the external environment. And we say, well, that's real because I'm experiencing it now in a waking state. And we discard anything that happens in an altered state. And so what we need to understand is that this is all just sort of like a human construct. It's all just terminology. Like dreaming, reality, is one unreal and the other one real? No, it's all real, because you're experiencing it. So what we need to understand to actually prove that we are dreaming right now is a direct experience, because a lot of the people in the West, they're going to be reaching for someone to tell them something. We need some scientific evidence that we're dreaming. That's just simply not how it works, because what we need is the harmonization of the left and the right brain hemisphere, and we don't have that because of Western state education. So we've been thrown into this sort of left brain prisonhood, and the right brain hemisphere has not been really integrated. And so a lot of people now are actually going through this transition where they're balancing out the brain, and now they're getting flung in the opposite direction. I did a video on this. I think it was the one about New Age bullshit. And New Age is the new cage. Now we're getting flung into the right brain hemisphere, and people have forgotten that actually we still need to critically engage. Like, not everything is illusion, not everything is theory. There are still objective functions of this cosmos that we find ourselves in. A lot of people, a lot of truthers have now started saying things like, gravity is a theory. It's like, well, it's not a theory that you're not floating right now, yeah? So there is actually one reality, and it works in set ways, but there are infinite ways of experiencing that. And as I'm sort of contesting here, is that actually the nature of that in its core is illusion, is phantasmagoria, but this is the divine paradox in hermetics, in sort of esoteric philosophy, because just because something is illusion doesn't mean it isn't real. Okay, just like when a magician shows you all these tricks, to you the illusion is real. He can see through it, but when you can see through it, and this is really what we're trying to teach here on New Earth, which is an awakening to a higher state of consciousness, then you will be able to see the Maya that's all around you. Then you'll actually start awakening in your dreams as well, and you'll become lucid in your dreams. Call them a lucid dream. When you wake up inside the dream, when you're dreaming, you're awake within the dream. You see, and then you actually start seeing that what was otherwise formerly just happening to you. You wake up and go, oh God, you recall your dream, what on earth was going on? Now actually you can start to manipulate, move left and right, and now do things, manifest people and objects and all sorts of things, flying, lots of shenanigans you can get up to for the promiscuous, because you can basically just, like I say, manifest anything that you want. And so I think firstly, people will tend to gravitate towards sexual experiences and also flying. That seems to be two themes, at least amongst the men that I've spoken to about lucid dreaming. And so the proof can be attained once we actually start exercising our minds in a more balanced way. And this involves what we typically refer to as meditation. This will give rise to an experience that we think of as the alchemical wedding. So this is sort of like the yin and the yang. If you're going to think of it as the nervous system, this is sort of historically known as the Pingala and the Ida, right? Which connect sort of the two cherubim, the two cerebrums. Cherubim being sort of like, these angelic baby-like creatures that we see floating around in this Michelangelo painting, for example. And so what they're pointing at there is like, you've got Adam reaching up to God, and God is, of course, enveloped in this robe, which is actually, if you look at it more closely, you can see that it's a brain, and this is the right brain hemisphere. And this is what's required if you're to reach and balance the two. Once you experience that, you'll see what they were talking about in films like The Matrix and The Truman Show and all of these metaphysical films like Solaris, and even the Leonardo DiCaprio Inception. So, the truth and the proof can, like as William Blake said, The truth can never be told so as to be understood and not be believed. It's not something where you can see someone teaching in a secondary school like this, that. It cannot come that way. So someone can show you the door, but you're the one that has to walk through it, okay? They can give you the key and you've got to turn it in the door. That's the only way it works. That's the only way we can actually have proof. And so once you've experienced that, you'll begin to see through not only the illusion of reality, but also the illusion of these tricksters and how they've set up this social matrix for us, which we cannot transcend because they've imposed their thought patterns on us through secondary school, taught by people who also themselves went through the same program, and they're just repeating like parrots that program, which you think of as matrix. And now we're walking along on a daily basis, and we forget to look up, we forget to contemplate, we forget to philosophize, and simply contemplate our own existence. As William Blake also said, the tree which moves some to tears of joy is in the eyes of others a mere green thing that stands in the way. Some see nature all deformity and ridicule, and some scarce see nature at all. But to the eyes of imagination, nature is imagination itself. Okay, nature is visible spirit, and spirit is an invisible nature. These are all just semantics though. It's all just words. Everything is vibration. Everything is energy. Right? There are no nouns. There are no objects. All of these are just, as we know, matter is just energy condensed to a slow vibration. So now we have these various different vibrations, and I can touch this, I can touch that, and it feels very much concrete, like it's fundamentally there. And it is, but it's only because you've perceived that through the human lens and through this sort of like architecture of our own anatomy, which is of a similar vibration to the things that we can perceive. And the things that exceed that, way beyond the visible bandwidth of light, that's where a lot of this more lucid states that we return to at night, I would say, and these higher densities, these higher dimensional levels, which we think of in terms of heaven and spirit, and all these like words that people just want to ridicule because they haven't yet had the experience, because of Western education, and that's how they can keep it from us, because no one is having these direct experiences. The only way to really go about that is to begin spending more time on your own, and then go monk mode, start living in a more existential, like philosophical way, and once you actually do start spending more time on your own, these things that I'm talking about will just become like directly experiential, as opposed to them just being things that you can say, this is nonsense, like you read through the comments from past videos, you're talking gibberish, this is an idiotic, blah, 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 all that stuff. Of course you're going to get that. But that's simply because they've never had the experience. They haven't yet been reborn to a higher state of consciousness. If you think of this dot, for example, moving around on the screen, it's seemingly free, and it can just do what it likes, right? But then eventually it realizes that it's constrained by the extent of the rectangle. And as it actually starts to contemplate its own existence more so, it expands in mind, it expands and expands. Then it realizes that it's imprisoned to some extent. Now you're knocking on the door, you see, and once you knock on the door loudly enough, it opens, and as they say in the mystery traditions, the doors of the temple fly open, right? The temple being this here, and all of this, the expansion of the Ajna chakra, all of this, the illusion of separation is in that moment dissipated. It's totally removed. Like you will attain mukti, moksha, emancipation. Your spirit will be free and liberated. That's something that's just going to happen. It's an objective reality that many people have experienced, but until you have, you're not going to have proof of this, and you're going to be looking all out there, looking at these scientific sort of ways of thinking, blah, blah, blah. And we are the blind spot. So the proof is all here. It's all about divergent thinking and not convergent thinking, or at least balancing those two things out. So that's what we need. This is what you might think of as the Orient or the esoteric philosophies of the world, but also through Western traditions like Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and look at a lot of the Egyptians, what they were up to, and the Sumerians. All this stuff has been there, but it's been hidden from us, and we've instead been imposed with this elementary system of education that's ultimately fractured the mind and into elements. And so we can't see the wood through the trees. We can't see the whole. The whole is greater than some of its parts. And so once we do that, of course, we can start to live more freely on this planet. And that's really what this channel is all about. We want to be experiencing higher states of consciousness so that we can actually solve the problems like poverty, like mental suffering, anxiety, depression. And inequality will be resolved as a result of the eradication of poverty. So, we can do that by coming together raising human consciousness, bringing people together, because that's ultimately the most fundamental thing that we can do, is come together. Divide and rule is the oldest trick in the book, and they're still doing that. That's really what it comes down to. Whether it's like 5th generation warfare today, which is more psychological, based on social engineering and misinformation, or whether it's way back in past, 4th, 3rd, 2nd generation warfare, whatever it is, it's always been divide and rule. So we need to unite, come together. And then we can start to, have discussions and live in a true democracy. Because if we did live in a true democracy, the first thing that we would ask ourselves is, what are we doing? The government would say, well, we've got all your money, but they're never actually doing anything useful with it, like resolving poverty. All these things would be long in the past if they were actually interested in doing that. So we have to be the government. We are the 99.9% already. So newearth.land will point out exactly what we can do to live in a sort of better world and do what the government should have been doing all along, but never will. And that is to decommodify shelter, energy, food and water, make those things basic human rights. That's where our money should be spent, right? Because we would all agree that the first things we actually need are shelter, energy, food and water. So those things should be, that's what we should be paying for. So instead, let's do that in an optional, more transparent and democratic way. And that's ultimately what New Earth is. It's about a post-capitalist society that balances out some of these socialist principles with some, more capitalist principles. It's like the continuation to some regard of what we've been doing, but with the inclusion of shelter, energy, food and water being decommodified. So that's where socialism for me starts and ends. Right. On that, we can build a sort of token-based cryptocurrency type model, whatever you want to do. But ultimately, in a nutshell, it's not really what this video is about. But that was a digression. Hopefully, though, more and more people can begin to see that they are dreaming. Reality is a phantasmagoria. The nature of it is illusory, but you're still experiencing the illusion. That's really what the brains do. Brains fixate the seemingly concrete Cartesian outside reality, so that we think it's the only thing. But it's strictly a human world. The external environment is conferred by our organism. If like the color red is to us is not red to other species, like other insects and animals, for example. But anyway, this is for another video now. Do have a jolly afternoon, evening, morning, whatever time of day it is, whatever part of the world you're in. Let me know your name. Get in touch. Adam@newearth.land. Thanks very much for watching.